So I am going to speak on the subject of management of endometrial cancer in subfertile women. I hope you are able to see my screen.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I'm going to speak on the management of endometrial cancer in young women. So endometrial cancer, about 4% of women with endometrial cancer are younger than 40 years. And most of them, around 70%, are nulliparous diagnosis, because in the current era, women are delaying their childbearing. And most of these, fortunately, are diagnosed in early stage, where almost 95% have 5-year survival rates. And most of these cancers, even in young patients, are sporadic, with only 10% considered familial. So 90% are sporadic and 10% are familial, even in the young population. And basically, they have type 1 endometrioid estrogen dependent cancer. Type 2 cancers are extremely rare in younger population. Nulliparity and infertility are classical risk factors for endometrial cancer, as all of you know. Obesity, polycystic ovarian syndrome, anovulatory cycles due to any cause, all this cause hyperestrogenic states, which is the main predisposing factor for the development of type 1 endometrial cancer. And fortunately, fertility preservation is possible in early stage endometrial cancer in young women. Although the standard practice is total hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy, but in nulliparous women who are desirous of fertility, it is possible to preserve the uterus for the reproductive function. Conservative treatment consists of mainly medical management with hormonal therapy, because these cancers are very sensitive to progestins. Most of these tumors respond to progestins. A retrospective meta-analysis of 28 studies shows that 76% respond to progestins. This is a bit older study, 2004, but in my experience, our personal experience, around 90% of people respond to progestin therapy. Of course, upon discontinuation of therapy, many of them recur. Once you stop the progestins, many of them are going to have recurrence. So when you want to preserve the fertility in a patient with endometrial cancer, then you have to have certain guidelines. The guidelines are the patient should have well-differentiated tumor, grade 1 or grade 2. Grade 2 also may be included. Tumor should be confined to the endometrium with no myometrial invasion. But I feel that even if you have a minimal myometrial invasion, less than 1/3, it should not be a contraindication in my personal experience. There should not be an extension to cervical stroma. And as far as tumor size is concerned, it should be less than 2 centimeter. But I think this is not a strict guideline. Ideally, you should have a smaller tumor, but larger tumor also it is possible to conserve the uterus. And the diagnosis should be made on hysteroscopic guided biopsy. Okay, because a DNC is going to remove the tumor also, which is going to facilitate the hormonal therapy. So the diagnosis is based on hysteroscopic biopsy. Better to have hysteroscopy to know the exact condition of the uterine cavity. Same time, you should try to rule out synchronous malignancy in these young patients. They can harbor a simultaneous ovarian malignancy or breast cancer if it is an hereditary cancer. So hereditary cancer is seen in around 10%. And they can harbor synchronous malignancy in the ovary or breast. So you must look out for breast cancer and ovarian cancer also in this patient. And obviously, on imaging, there should not be any extra uterine disease. There should not be any enlarged lymph nodes. Ovaries should be normal. Adnexa should be normal. And the serum markers can be used. Serum markers like CA125 and human epididymis factor 4 can be used, but it's not mandatory to do in all the patients. Some patients, we can use serum tumor markers, and they should be normal. Now, in the era of molecular classification, molecular subtyping on the endometrial biopsy is recommended depending on the availability of the availability and resources. So you know that we have 4 types: pole mutated endometrial cancer, which has got ultra mutated tumor. And pole mutation is very difficult to measure because it requires a focused DNA sequencing. So normally, most of us don't do pole mutation study on the endometrial biopsy. We just concentrate on MMR deficiency, mismatch repair gene deficiency, or P53 mutation. These 2 molecular markers are very easy to pick up by immunohistochemistry. So MMR and P53 markers can be picked up very easily by the pathologist by simple immunohistochemistry. Pole mutations are very difficult to diagnose on IHC. Now, the importance of molecular subtyping in this patient is that you must remember that 5% of endometrial cancer, which are supposed to be low grade, grade 1 or grade 2, they have a P53 mutation, and they are not suitable for conservative management. Although the percentage is low, but ideally better to do a P53 mutation study in these patients. And if you find that patient has got MMR deficiency, then MMR deficiency is associated with Lynch syndrome in 10% of the patients, as against 3% for all the endometrial cancer. So incidence of Lynch syndrome in younger population is around 10% as compared to the older population, which is around 3%. Now, some patients have hereditary endometrial cancer. Okay, they are usually due to mismatch repair gene deficiency, MMR deficiency. Sometimes they could be due to BRCA mutation. So germline BRCA mutation panel testing on blood sample may be advised selectively, not all the patients, selectively, depending on the family history, depending on the genetic counseling, you may advise BRCA mutation study also. Now, further management will depend on the special investigations. It's better to have an MRI scan, contrast enhanced MRI scan. Better to have a contrast. Normally, we use intravenous gadolinium. MRI scan of pelvis and abdomen is done especially to know the myometrial invasion and the lymph node status. PET scan is generally not recommended in early stage ovarian cancer. It is not reliable. It should not be done. I think MRI scan with contrast is good enough. Now, tumor markers. So, what is the role of serum HE4 and CA125? Should we do it for all the patients? It's not required to do it for all the patients, but maybe done selectively in selected patients. If you have a myometrial invasion, less than 1/3, the tumor is grade 2, or the tumor size is large, more than 2 centimeters, these are all relative contraindications for conservation. In these patients, you may do serum HE4 and CA125, and they should be normal if you want to conserve the uterus. So in a study, I think published in 2013, they showed that serum HE4 and CA125, they significantly correlate with the grade. Higher the grade, higher the chance of having serum HE4 and CA125 values to be high. So lymph node metastasis, myometrial invasion, cervical involvement, phagostaging, all these correlate with serum HE4 and CA125. So in suspicious cases with invasion into the myometrium or large tumor size, you may ask for serum HE4 and serum CA125. Now coming to the management, the most important thing is that hysteroscopic resection of the tumor. Many of these patients have multiple polyps in the endometrial cavity. And hysteroscopic resection of this polyp is very important if you want to restore the fertility. So hysteroscopic resection of the polyp is important. especially if you have a bulky polypoidal tumors. And then you treat them with hormones, mainly the progestins. Now, what is the type of progestins which should be used? You can use oral progestins. Most commonly, which I use is magistral acetate. This can be used alone or it can be used along with LNG intrauterine system called Mirena, which appears more effective. Oral progestins, normally the dose used of magistral acetate is 160 milligram per day, with or without LNG Mirena, depending on the institutional policy. And regression is usual in our experience and is seen within 3 months. Endometrial response is monitored by monthly transvaginal sonography, which shows progressive thinning of the endometrium. And endometrial biopsy is done at the end of 4 months, as TVS alone is not sufficient to rule out malignancy. So you don't have to do biopsy monthly as long as the endometrium is regressing. So at the end of 4 months, you can do an endometrial biopsy. If the endometrium still shows malignancy after 4 months, then the patient is counseled for hysterectomy. But in my experience, many of these patients are very adamant and they want to continue with the conservative treatment. So a patient is not willing for hysterectomy, then probably you can increase the dose of magistral acetate from 160 mg to 240 mg or 320 mg if the patient has responded partially. Partial responders to hormone, we may increase the dose. If the patient has not responded to hormones at all, then I think you must strictly advise them hysterectomy. These are the common side effects of the progestins, but the most serious side effect would be thrombosis. If you use progestins for long term, these patients are prone to develop DVT and they can end up with the pulmonary embolism. So you must look out for thrombosis. Now, caution, the most important thing is that not uncommon to see a patient who has got thin endometrium after progestin therapy and after LNG device. They do a biopsy, and biopsy is reported as hyperplasia with atypia. But most of these patients represent progesterone effect and LNG device induced inflammatory atypia. Sometimes atypia can be caused by LNG device by itself and the progestin hormone by itself. So the pathologist has to be very, very careful, and you have to have an expert pathology opinion to differentiate between atypia induced by LNG device and atypia which is representing malignancy. Now, once the tumor has regressed after hormonal therapy, then how do you manage? In patients with regression of malignancy, further treatment would depend on the marital status and desire for conception. If immediate conception is not required, some patients are not married and they're not ready for conception, then you must continue them on low dose progestins, at least 10 milligram for 14 days per cycle, indefinitely. You must continue them on progestins indefinitely. And prolonged high-dose progestin therapy may result in unresponsive endometrium and secondary amenorrhea. That's why you should not use very high dose of progestins for a long period of time, because it may result in secondary amenorrhea and unresponsive endometrium. If the immediate conception is desired, then the progestin treatment is continued for 3 more months after the endometrium has become normal, totally for a period of 6 to 9 months. And if the endometrium remains stable and normal at the end of 6 months, then the patient is allowed to conceive. And it's very important for the fertility specialist to have confidence and expertise to treat these patients. Most of the fertility experts may be apprehensive to treat a patient with malignancy. So you have to have a good team of fertility experts. A spontaneous conception is unlikely to occur in a short duration of next few months. It's better to have a method to conceive artificially. So probably IVF appears to be indicated in these patients. You should not allow them to conceive normally because it's very unlikely. So better to go for IVF treatment. This is my own experience of 10 cases over a period of 6 years. You can see here that all these patients had grade 1 tumor. They had stage 1A tumor. Failed IVF, failed IVF, failed IVF. Here, one patient conceived with IUI. again failed IVF, again one more failed IVF, conceived normally after adoption of a baby. Patient adopted a baby and she conceived normally. Okay, and many of the patients have had recurrence after stopping hormonal therapy. Again, you can see one more patient, stage 1A, has conceived after IVF. And one patient had a very large tumor, 6 into 6 centimeter. She responded to hormone. She had recurrence. Again, she responded to hormone. Again, she has recurrence. Again, she responded. So multiple times she recurred and multiple times she responded to hormonal therapy. One patient with grade 1 tumor didn't respond to hormonal therapy, and ultimately it turned out to be grade 3 tumor. That's why it's very important to have a molecular classification. Probably these people have P53 mutation. And one patient, stage 1A, did not respond to, she had recurrence after 1 year with peritoneal metastasis. And she was BRCA mutation positive. And she has responded very well to rucaparib treatment. So BRCA mutation also may be seen in these kind of patients. Now, conclusion, hormonal therapy is very effective in the management of endometrial cancer if conservation is desired. LNG intrauterine system appears promising and is effective as oral persistence without much side effects. Conception rates are unfortunately low even after the reversal of malignancy. Probably the endometrium is not receptive. So conception rates after IVF are quite low. Hysterectomy should be advised if hormonal treatment fails after the completion of childbearing. Pregnancy rate described in the literature is around 35 to 60%, and my experience is around 30%. And recurrence is very common after conservative treatment. So a patient who is not responding, not conceiving, and should be advised hysterectomy because recurrence is very, very common. Thank you very much. I think with this, I end my talk.